What's going on? This is Mighty Fine back with yet another week of price action analysis for you. Last week was pretty accurate, and we're going to see if we can do the same for the final week of January. Before we dive into that, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. It helps my channel grow, and it helps this content get to people who need the help as well. If you don't already, subscribe. I'll be dropping some educational content as well, just some more simple lessons to help your technical analysis improve. So without further ado, what we're going to look at this week: US dollar, AUDUSD, GBPUSD, GBPJPY, and EURUSD. Pretty much all major pairs aside from GBPJPY, which is a major cross. These are all pairs that I trade pretty consistently in the FX space. It was a good week. Everything's kind of just, playing around. Volatility and volume have certainly come back in the market, which is nice. In terms of the technicals for this week, we're still seeing this bullish daily flow here. In my opinion, it's a retracement against this whole leg that we highlighted here. We anticipated that this was going to happen last week. After that H4 break of flow, price came back in, honored the demand from this little sideways movement right here. And now we're seeing yet another switch into bullish flow here. So we got a break of flow from this little attempt to continue pushing down. Buyers stepped in, and it looks like we are starting to transition into bullish behavior. Now, price needs to make it above this H4 supply right here in order to extend, where we then have a break or bounce scenario right up top. My opinion is indicated by these little colored arrows over here. So break or bounce, right? If it rejects from this area, it's looking much more bearish. If it goes below the current H4 demand, the lows of this pullback, then it's definitely bearish for the week. If price breaks above this high right here around 12181, then I am anticipating the first place it's going to head into is this 8-hour and 4-hour major supply here. Lots of volume, lots of selling behavior from that area. So certainly one to watch. If price can break above both of those levels, then we're going to retest the daily supply level where we have yet another break or bounce scenario. So lots of these areas are good to start trying to build potential trade ideas. We just need to see what's happening. Personally, I need some more data. There's nothing on this chart that allows me to make a plan, a trade plan right now. So I need a little bit more data. I'm very interested in this H4 supply and if price can stay above that H4 demand. In my opinion, with the US Federal Reserve coming out and talking about interest rates and sort of tapering off their quantitative easing behavior from the pandemic, I don't see why the dollar should remain super strong because if interest rates go up, then the dollar is being taxed. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect. We have FOMC this week as well, so that is probably going to stir the pot a little bit. Keep that in mind. Check your economic calendar and make sure that you're aware of those red folders around the Fed and FOMC for the week to come. So my levels to watch: H4 supply, and then this first gray box right here where we have our break or bounce. If price can stay above this area and continue to push to the upside, then we have target 1 here, target 2 here. If price cannot make it above those areas, I'm looking for a break below H4 demand, and that will switch my bias into selling the dollar for the week. So let's go into AUDUSD. This one is interesting. Let's go back to the daily chart, and what we can see is we are still pushing downwards. Friday was a big bearish day for AU, and last week we talked about this H4 flow switch here, right? We talked about this pullback in relation to the higher time frame trend. Our daily trend was these red boxes to these highs right up here, and we got this initial switch of flow indicated by this break of supply right here. Price is coming back for a full retracement right now. So this is a very interesting area. If I were to see a transition early in the week from this area into bullish flow, maybe on my M5 or my M15 chart, I would certainly want to consider a long position. I would then need to see that H4 supply broken right there and a pattern of bullish behavior, maybe something like this, headed up into this area here, then this area here, then that area there, break or bounce, break or bounce, break or bounce. If instead price continues to push below this H4 demand, we start to enter no man's land, in my opinion. And I would wait for these lower areas of this demand to be engaged before I consider anything. I would need to see a very strong intraday reversal into bullish flow in order to say that these red daily demands are once again a buying zone. So let price play out. Let's see how Sunday opens up. I'm going to keep an eye on AU. This is kind of my baby, my brainchild. If price breaks below this level, I'm going to sit on my hands for a minute. Watch how price behaves closer into these areas here. I don't like this. This is a lot of liquidity. A lot of people will be trying to get in there. It's an easy place for the big fish to come in and take people out, get some liquidity for their orders. Best price point that was acquired in this bullish push is all the way down here somewhere. So that's your job to find a target if price gets down there. Again, if price blows through this little blue zone and this darker red zone here, it is a very, very bearish opinion time. And we'll wait for a retest and we'll sell the heck out of this thing. So these are my opinions. Up, down, break, bounce here. Major break or bounce here, and absolutely selling below 71300. And that's my plan for the week. GBPUSD, kind of the same thing. In my opinion, pound is pretty overstretched to the upside here. If we go all the way back up to the weekly chart, we can see this is a very strong weekly flow to the downside. Price is just wicked right below this weekly supply level. And now we're seeing a bit of a turnaround. This daily demand to me is very, very interesting. I want to watch this as well. If price breaks below this, I would look for a retest to sell this thing at least back down into 132,800 to 131,850, roughly, into this weekly lower low demand that's down here from this red box, our daily leg. So I would look bearish below the daily demand level. I would need to see a retest relative to this whole flow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days of bearish pressure. So I would need to see something maybe like this, a break to the downside, then a retest back up here somewhere. Then I would be looking for that lower low to be expanded past, and then price to continue moving down. That's the bearish case. The bullish case would be a transition here into bullish flow on maybe our M15, H1, and then a nice retest. It could look something like, for example, price starts to flatten out a little bit and rotate here, transition, and then we're looking for a break or bounce scenario at this most recent H4 supply. If price can break above this, that retest is going to be the best move of the week right there. So keep that in mind. Anything above 136,600 is buying time. This is a major break or bounce scenario. I currently have a bearish overall bias on this, especially if the dollar decides to continue pushing upwards. Breaks below daily demand indicate certainly bearish. And if price honors that level, we may be still moving bullish. We may come back to retest these highs up here or even higher into the weekly supply zone we indicated earlier. Moving on to GBPJPY. Now this one is certainly looking a lot more bearish. I have an immediately bearish opinion on this one. We see that this daily demand we were talking about last week, where we said break or bounce, it's now been liquidated, right? Below this level, I said selling. It's time to sell. And what I want to see now is a retest relative to this gray box for an intraday sell opportunity. This is my last bearish flow leg on my intraday charts, my H4, H8, and daily chart. I would say that if we got a retest or a break of flow here, if this level is broken, we will get a nice full retest, and then we'll look to fade this thing lower. I will be watching the 156 point, whatever handle right here, our H4 supply, as well as the top, this top wick up here that gave us this whole leg to the downside. This one, you're going to need to just chill and wait, because there's just not enough data, and you don't necessarily want to try and, jump on the moving train here. Let it slow down. If we get the pullback above, this area for now, our most recent intraday supply, then we'll get a real retracement and we can look for an opportunity that way. If that can happen, I believe that price is going to pull back at least down into the 150-500 region down here, maybe 150 in total, towards this daily demand where I have an eyeball indicating for you. This was our weekly higher low. Price bounced off of it and made a big switch in flow here. This could certainly be a retracement relative to this behavior, right? A bounce off the weekly higher low, and then buyers step in again, create an intra-week, intra-month transition to the upside. Can't quite break into new highs. They need more orders. If price comes down into here, I will start to look for intraday reversals, maybe my H1 or H4 chart. If it goes bullish from the red box, I will consider buying. Anything below weekly demand, we're going to continue selling it. Last but not least, EURUSD. This one's a little bit cleaner. Last week, we talked about the start of a retracement here from our 4-hour chart. We had this break of flow. Last week, we were talking about this, and it came to fruition quite well. We said, if we break below this H4 demand to start the week, we're looking for bearish order flow. That came in very nicely. You can go observe this on the H1 chart, and you will see that bearish flow come in, and it was just a sell all week, right? Big, big, big fade. Right now, the important levels, in my opinion, are this H4 supply, H4 demand. If we break below this H4 demand and continue to flow bearish, then we have an interesting break or bounce on our daily demand right here. This created a big extension to the upside. If we go back to the daily chart or even the weekly chart, we'll see that this has been pushing upwards, but overall we've been pushing down. So I'm watching this transition. We're still sort of transitional. I'm anticipating buyers will step in either here at the red zone or back down in the base of the green zone and try and come back up and retest this 1.16500 area. So again, I would just wait and watch on the H4 here and see what happens. I'm not interested in selling this back down per se. If you wanted to, you could. There's going to be, enough room, maybe 60 pips or so, that you could probably get into that. But I'm just going to chill and wait and watch. If this can continue to the downside, awesome. I'll look for a break or bounce scenario there. And then I would need to see, maybe some sort of transition and then a retest like that and look for that expansion to the upside. Or if price decides to move back down below that level like that, I would need to see something like this, retest here and then fade back into the weekly. I think that's a good idea as well. So again, good trade potentials on these charts. I need a little bit more data, and I'm very interested to see how AUDUSD and GBPUSD open up for the week. It is going to be an interesting week. A lot of speculation is going on. We have FOMC, we have Fed. People are talking about interest rates. People are talking about repurchasing bond yields. High asset things like crypto and stocks are kind of getting their ass beat right now. So I'm excited. It should be a action-packed week at minimum. Be patient and try and build those high time frame ideas based off the H4 and daily zones I've indicated here, and you should do okay. Now, again, the execution and all that stuff, that's your style. That's up to you. If you want to learn more about that, check out my website, mightyfinefx.com. Doors will be reopening here very shortly. And until next week, as always, have fun and trade safe.